Welcome to tape number 2 in our continuing series entitled Jeet Kune Do Scientific Street Fighting. My name is Jerry Beasley, and I'll be your instructor for this tape. In tape number 2, we're going to look at strategies. What is your plan of action? The strategy for Jeet Kune Do is to intercept the intentions of the opponent. We have to have, first of all, mobility. If you have mobility, you can move. If you can move, you can control the distance. He who controls the distance controls the fight. We're going to look at several techniques for using mobility and our 5 ways of attack and our sparring. At the end of the tape, we'll look a little bit at the matrix approach to Jeet Kune Do. Our first technique that we're going to work on is called the step and slide method. This is our method for moving forward and back against an opponent. We'll take our stance, and then want to take the right foot forward slightly, the left foot sliding up. Right foot forward slightly, left foot sliding up. If we want to move back away from our opponent, we take our back foot and slide. Back foot and slide, back foot and slide. It's a relatively easy method of moving forward and back, directly in, directly away from your opponent. Once again, step, slide, step, slide. Now sometimes you'll incorporate the upper body to give you a little more momentum as you move. The arms moving back, back, the arms moving forward, and forward. Generally speaking, you don't want to telegraph any motion either moving forward or back. So your hands will stay in position, but you can make your body work for you. The body, again, moving forward and back. Now notice that the reverse foot, the heel is off the floor, and the front foot, the foot is on the floor. You want to basically, as you're moving around, be on the balls of the feet. You'll find that you'll be a little bit faster if you do that. Notice that the front foot now, the heel is off the floor as I step forward and back. Now you don't want to be too tense as you do this, but certainly in a demonstration it might look like we're very structured as we perform. Step, step, back, back. Step, step, back, back. Now it doesn't matter whether you have the right lead or the left lead for this, and certainly in some circumstances you'll be forced to put the left side out in front. Or it may be a preference for you. Same rule applies. The front foot, if you're moving forward, move the front foot first, then let the reverse foot come up. Front foot, then reverse. If you're moving back, let the back foot move. Front foot, back and back. Forward, forward, back and back. Now, as you're moving like this, the reason that we want to move that front foot first is sometimes you'll step out and be tentative. In other words, you'll think that you want to bridge the gap, but then decide to come back on it. And by making the front foot move first, you're much more in position to do that as you move. Let's try it back with the right. And what we want to do this time is just rock back and forth. And you can hear kind of the cadence of the step. Step, step and slide. Step, step and slide. Now from this position I can move forward. Or I can start moving a little bit faster as I do the routine. And once again, that's our step, forward and back. As you practice these techniques in a mirror or perhaps by yourself, you then want to take the next step and get a partner to come in. I'll be using Ian Marshall again today as my partner. Ian, if you'll just take a position there and you're a little too close, so let's have you move back first of all, or you can move forward. Okay, step forward and step back, and step forward and step back. Okay, now I want you to take your left toe and turn it a little more forward, because obviously if your feet are pointed forward, that's the direction that you're going. There are some stances that they use in various martial arts in which are a little more sideways. Now you can step sideways, but it's a little more difficult to do. This facilitates a fast movement forward and a fast movement back. Okay, now in that position, let's see if you can step forward and back, nice and light, that's it, and forward and back. And keep your knees bent, balls of the feet, forward and back. Now move back again. Okay, now 2 forward, 1, 2. That's it, and back 2. And forward 2, and back 2. All right, that's fine. Now, once you have the techniques down, the next step would be to work with your partner on this. I'll make the first motion as my partner goes back, and then I'll move back and let my partner move forward. So I'm going to step forward, and he moved back, and then I'll move back and forward and back and forward and back. We want to keep about that same distance between us. Okay, forward and back. Now I'm going to move 2 back this time. 1, 2, and forward. 1, 2, and back. 1, 2, and forward. 1, 2, and back. 1, 2, forward. 1, 2. And then, once we have these basic steps down, it's time to start moving around more in a free form, just trying to move forward and back, using either the left lead or the right lead for this. And we can switch. Okay, we're just moving. Okay, that's good. Next we'll look at the motion laterally, moving right and left. It usually takes many hours to perfect that step forward and back, and it's very important that you put it into actual sparring. This time, instead of the linear step forward and back, we're going to start moving laterally. Sometimes it'll be advantageous to move away from your opponent, and that's to the right and to the left. What we don't want to do is cross our legs. In other words, we don't want to move our back foot that crosses the leg and sets us up for a sweep or a counter or a leg immobilization. What we want to try to incorporate is keeping the feet in a position so that as we step, we're nice and smooth as that. We call that lateral stepping. If you're moving, once again, forward and back, anytime you move forward, move your front foot. Whether it's the right or the left, move your front foot. Anytime you're moving to your right, you should move your right foot first. It's a little step over and then follow up for reposition. Okay, so to move to the right, 1 like that, 1 like that, 1 like that. To move to the left, we'll move the left foot first. 1, 2, and 3. Anytime we're moving to the right, we're going to move our right foot. Anytime we're moving to the left, we're going to move our left foot. And you can incorporate this in the same motion as the forward and back techniques. Let's first of all move to the right, to the left, to the right, to the left. Okay? Now, if I switch over and place my left foot in front, it's the exact same principle. If I'm moving to my left, I'll move my left foot first. If I'm moving to my right, I'm going to move my right foot first. Left, left foot, right, right foot. Switching again, now I'm going to put it back into my motions. Forward, right, forward and back, just putting the techniques together. To the right, to the left, forward, to the right, back, left, forward. Just like that. Full speed. Let's try it this time with our partner. Ian, you'll come in. Let me see you just do the stance first of all. Okay, if you're moving to your right, move your right foot first. That's it. If you're moving to the left, left foot, to the right, and to the left. Okay, now let's try 2 to the right. 1 and 2. And to the left, 1 and 2. Now take your first step to the right and hold that. Now notice at this position, the feet are wider apart and they're open for attack. So it's extremely important that you compensate by pulling the left foot back as fast as possible. Now, we'll try the techniques together. As I move to the right, of course, he'll move to the left. As I move to the left, he'll move his right foot first. So he has to compensate for the fact that we're on opposite sides here. So 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. Like anything, it's easier to be the leader than the follower. We'll switch steps. This time we're going to move to my left first, moving my left foot first, which means that he'll have to move his right first. 1, 2, and to my right. 1, 2, and to my left. 1, 2, and to my right. 1, 2. Now, let's see if we can put this drill together so that we're moving forward and back, left and right. So forward and back, left and right. Forward, back, left, right. Forward, back, left, right. Forward, back, left, right. Okay, and that's how you would practice lateral motion for our stepping and mobility drills. In some arts, it's important to follow exactly the techniques. In Jeet Kune Do, contrary to that, we adapt to the situation. I know that a lot of people in Jeet Kune Do think in terms of using the right or the strong side. In many situations in the Jun Fan kickboxing, we'll find that the left side is equally as important as the right side. What's important is that you are able to develop both right side and left side techniques. If that's the case, then we have to have a switch step. We have to have a motion that allows us to move from right lead to left lead fast and efficiently. So what we're going to do is take the right foot. If we're going to switch positions, we take the right foot back, giving ground, giving space, and that space we're going to use quickly as we step over. And so if the front foot is brought back and takes the position of the rear foot then turns quickly around. The reverse foot heel goes off the floor. We step back and across, back and across, back and across, back and across. Now, as you get more advanced, you'll find that there's an extra step in here. You'll step back, position, step back. Now watch my left foot, position. I'll pull this foot back, the front foot back, then I'll place my front foot forward and then reposition my back foot. So I get actually a third or broken rhythm there, a third step. 1, 2. Now this is the beginner step, 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 step. The advance is the step, 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 step. Step, step, step. Once again, in the first stages, as I pick this up, the switch step, I want to just move my front foot back and reverse foot forward, like this. And as I get a little better, I'll find that I want to reposition my back foot. So I want to pull and reposition. And you can hear kind of the cadence as we do that routine. The end result of these mobility exercises is to be able to adapt them for self-defense. And certainly the best way to do that is to get a partner and start moving back and forth in a hands-on positioning. Ian, if you'll come in and let's try these techniques. Now to switch step, you want to move your front foot back out of the way and then switch. And now your front foot back, reverse foot forward. That's it. And forward and back and forward and back. Now, what will happen, Ian, you just stay there for a second, is that in some cases, I'll be in a position, perhaps he'll have a right lead, I'll have a left lead. And what I want to do is switch position, okay, fast and efficient, so that now I can move in and use another technique. In this case, what I wanted to do, I found that I was on unmatched sides here, and I really didn't have my hook kick available to me. So I want to switch position so that now I can throw my hook kick or my forward or lead hand type of technique. So the switch step facilitates that quick little motion back and forth like that. And sometimes we can do it together. Ready, switch, and switch, and switch, and switch. And that's how we complete the switch step for the Junfan kickboxing. This next mobility exercise will allow us to move in an angular fashion outside of the opponent's perimeters, outside of their zone. We do it in the following manner. If we want to move to the right, if your opponent is straight on, instead of moving straight in or straight back or laterally, which puts you still at an opening to your opponent, we're going to try to move 45 degrees away from the opponent. We do that by taking the forward foot and stepping out 45 degrees. Immediately we can switch the step or the direction to put us back at the opposite 45 degrees. Let's look at that. This time we move back and over 45 degrees. This allows us to strike with any type of a punch or kicking type of technique, or we can reposition the kick in that direction. If we want to move in the opposite position, we simply pull back and across. Pull back and over, back and across. And we can put this in our switch step, and then again we're ready to position at 45 degrees. This is very similar to the switch step, except that instead of stepping straight back and forward, I'm stepping back and 45 degrees, stepping back and 45 degrees, stepping back and forward in the switch step, and this time I'm going to step 45 degrees over to avoid a confrontation with my opponent and to put me in a superior position to attack my opponent's weakness. And that's how we complete the angular step in our fighting method. Full speed. This angular stepping is actually more advanced, but still an important part of the actual fight. Ian, if I can use you in here. This time line up right in front of me here, and so that I can kind of show what we're doing. If your opponent is out in front of you and you find that it's not working to simply step back or forward, or if you move over, he follows you, you also have that option of angulating away from him. This way, if I step back and he's coming in, as I step back, filling in that gap, I'll step over out of the way. Now this puts me in a terrific position because here I'm fully prepared to attack my opponent, but he's not in a good position to attack me. Let me show you that one more time. So if I catch my opponent, step right over here again. If I catch my opponent moving back and forth, let's try that, back and forth, and you come in with me, and forward. And this time, I'll just step right over out of the way. Let me try that again. Okay, so he comes forward and back and forward, and I just kind of step right out of the way. And that allows me to put in any type of a weapon that I want to from an unguarded position. I want to continually be in position to where I can attack his weaknesses. Go back and let's try that again. This time as I bring him back into me, I'm going to take him back, and then as he comes in, I'll angulate over here. Now watch what I've done at this point. I'm now in position to attack or to strike at even a better angle. So as we come back and forward, I come back and I step over, allowing me to strike my opponent in this position. Okay, so once again, stay right here, Ian. As we're in position here, as he's moving back, what I've done is I've stepped back, I've let him come back, I've brought him in this time, but instead of staying back, I've stepped over out of the way. And as I step out of the way, I'm now in position to attack my opponent. And the exact opposite, if I lead him back into me, I take him back. This time I lead him back into me, but I step over out of the way. Once again, I'm in a superior position to attack my opponent here. And that's what we call angular stepping in our fighting method. The final mobility exercise I'm going to show you is called the pivot step. The pivot step is extremely important for the advanced fighter in that in some cases you'll be in a position to where it's not advantageous to move back or forward or right to the left. You want to pivot out of the way. You want to make a full 90-degree turn. So what I'm doing from this position is I'm taking my front foot and I'm pivoting as much as, it doesn't have to be a full 90 degrees, but as much as 90 degrees, which takes me from this line over to that line. And once again, from position, I'm going from here over to there. From here over to there. Now I can do this on both sides and I can make the full 360 degrees. To do that, Ian, come in. And let me position you to do that. Take your left lead. Okay, so as you would practice this, each time you're moving, as you're looking straight to your opponent, you'd move 90 degrees. Ready? Turn. One. And now turn. And now turn. And turn. And what we're doing, once again, is from the pivot position, we're taking that front foot to pivot with, and we move a full 90 degrees. Again, you can move less than 90 degrees in a lot of situations. Okay, so as he moves, just for practice, he'll move 90 degrees. 1 and 2, nice and quick, and 3 and 4. All right, now switch step, and this time we're going to pull back to his left. Ready? And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right, that's good. All right, Ian, if you'll step right over here, just to show you how this works. As I'm practicing, I'm just going to step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, you see that I used both feet on this. Again, the beginner is just going to be able to make a little pivot, and then as you get more advanced on it, you'll be in position to where you can use both feet to work with you. So not only am I stepping, but I'm repositioning at the same time. Now, I can move back or I can move around as well. In some cases, I'll find myself just making a little turn like that to reposition to get away from the opponent. And I'll show you how that works. Ian, if you'll come back in and position right here in front of me with the left lead facing me. We had talked about that lateral stepping, so as he comes in, I'll step back, I'll take him back, I'll bring him in once more, and I'm going to laterally step out of, not laterally, but angular step out of the way. Once I do that, watch the pivot. The pivot takes me out of position altogether. Once more, as we're moving. As he moves in, I'll angulate my step out of the way. Now this puts me in position, or I could simply pivot out of the way. I want to show that again. As he comes in, I'm stepping out of the way, but instead of simply moving or hitting, I'm just going to take my hand like this and pivot out of position. In tight, if he's coming in tight and he has me in like this, I might simply reposition my feet and then pivot out of the way. And that puts me in a terrific position to counter my opponent's advances. Once more, as he's coming in, I'll step, putting my palm right here against his elbow, I'll pivot out of the way. Okay? And that goes from, Ian, step right over here for a second. All I did was I stepped back, 45 out, and now pivot around. Okay? I step back, 45 out, and pivot around. When we get to the actual sparring, you'll see how we incorporate all of these techniques. Perhaps the best way to actually practice these steps is have a partner come out and throw some punches at you. So in this case, I'm going to have Ian throw some punches light at the stomach, and what I'm going to do is just incorporate forward and back, lateral motion, angular stepping, pivot if it comes. It may not happen, it might happen. Work off the left lead for this, okay, and just throw some punches here. And you can see I'm already angulating out of the way. There's a pivot, okay, and here I'm moving forward and back. Now he's got the weapon, so he's probably not going to move back a lot, so that I'll end up moving over. But you can see I'm circling, okay, and if he comes in, there's an angular step out, and now I'm back on this position. Now I'm back across, and all I did was switch and take myself back as we do that. This is a good way to practice these routines. No discussion of strategy is complete without talking about the 5 ways of attack. Now, mobility is essential. Remember, he who controls the Distance controls the fight. Mobility allows us to control distance, hence we then control the fight. But as we attempt to hit our opponent, that is, offensively approach our opponent, we need a strategy for doing that. The most simple strategy is what Bruce Lee referred to as a direct attack, a simple direct attack. Ian, if you'll come in for a second, and let me just go through these. Give me a right lead for this. A direct attack is simply we punch straight in or we kick in whatever type we want. Side kick, backhand, whatever technique. That's the most elementary of all attack positions. Most beginners learn a technique and go out and perform a direct attack. A second, slightly more advanced way of approaching the opponent is by combinations. In this case, I throw one technique and a second technique, perhaps even a third technique. Maybe I'm interested in getting my round kick in, so I throw a technique up and hit him, or throw a technique up to get his attention and then follow through with another technique. So I'm working in combinations. I'm working combination techniques together. A double round kick is a combination technique. A straight jab doubled up is a combination technique. Now, combinations are the second level in which people typically work in. They'll do a single technique, and they'll find that they can do secondary techniques as well. In this case, our footwork comes into play, and we'll talk about that later, but our footwork comes into play as we're moving. That was just a switch step. A third method for attacking is called attack by drawing, ABD. Now, you can either draw your opponent in to you by opening up a line, perhaps low in this case, and then countering over the top of it, or high in this case and countering under it. You can draw your opponent into you, or you can draw your opponent out. You draw your opponent out by faking. The fake is the important part here. So we fake a low technique and then hit high. Okay? So we've drawn our opponent down low and then followed up high. A fourth method of attack is called hand immobilization or foot immobilization. A foot immobilization would simply be to immobilize the foot and then follow through with the technique. Or to check the leg and then follow through with the technique. Or, as we'll see again later on, to trap, to immobilize the arm and then follow through with the attack. What we're trying to do is hit our opponent, and we find out that the simple direct attacks don't work, so we have to be more complicated. Then the fifth level, perhaps the most involved, is a broken rhythm called a progressive indirect attack. Here we're changing the speed or direction of the technique. Okay? Now, we might also change the cadence, the rhythm that we're going in. Sometimes I might work with my opponent and just let him see me jabbing in here. He gets used to a slow jab, and then I fire in fast. Okay? So I've changed the direction, the speed of the technique there, called a progressive indirect attack. This time we're going to break each one of these 5 ways of attack down and show you some drills that you can work on at home. In tape number 1, we picked up the fundamentals, the basic kicks and punches. And to use this strategy of the simple direct attack, we simply insert each of those techniques. For example, if we line up against an opponent and we want to throw a straight lead, just come straight out. You're looking for the attributes of speed and mobility. This is what's going to carry us through on these basic attacks here. If we're looking for a hook kick, it's just thrown out. We can position up, position back. That will encourage our ability to hit. But basically, we're just trying to hit our opponent. Let me get Ian in, and we'll go ahead and show you some of these techniques. And we'll start with the straight lead hand. The straight lead hand is used typically, if he has a right lead, I have a right lead, I want to go straight out at my opponent. So as we move around here, I'm just going to throw a couple. Now, he's not actually throwing techniques. I'm just going to show you how it's done. But as we move around here, we get position. I just throw one low and throw one high. Low and high. The straight punch just kind of goes straight out like that. The second technique that we worked on was called the cross. The cross simply comes from the reverse side. Now, typically, you would not want to throw a cross without sitting up a straight lead. But in this case, since I know he's not going to hit me, I'll just demonstrate that it comes straight out in a cross. The next technique that we looked at was the back fist. As we're moving back and forth with our partner, I just get position and strike. Now, I can increase the effectiveness of this technique by adding a few variations. This technique is thrown straight out to increase the deceptiveness for a direct attack. I can make it non-telegraphic and independent, use the concept of independent motion. Okay, so as I'm moving out, I'm using the weapon first here. Okay, it becomes independent of the rest of the body as we move. So here's my back fist, and I want to throw it. and I just hit out like that. Okay? And again, these are all direct attacks. The hook works the same way as I move in, as does the uppercut. Now, an uppercut would not be the type of technique that I would throw as a direct attack, typically. Okay? But here is the techniques thrown. If we're sparring, just direct attacks. We're moving around, and notice that I'm just throwing direct attacks. Okay? Now, if I'm very fast, very powerful, it might be that these techniques will work for me. Just throwing direct attacks. There's the side kick. There's the inverted hook kick. There's the oblique kick to try to hurt the knee. Straight punch back. Straight punch low. I'm just using the direct attacks. Notice there's no combinations, not a whole lot of motion. I'm just moving with the techniques. Right now, thanks, Ian. The problem, of course, with the direct attack is it's easy for your opponent to pick up on it, and then they're able to block or counter or move out of the way. So we need to go to a more sophisticated method of striking. Attack by combination is a slightly more advanced routine that we use in terms of fighting. Now, each fighter develops a series of combinations that they prefer. For example, you might find one person who likes to double up on the jab. That just seems to be their favorite combination. Another person might like a jab hook as their basic combination. Another person might like a front kick, get them down low, and then follow through with a reverse punch. Bruce Lee was well known for a combination called the straight blast, or in other martial arts we refer to it as the blitz, from the German word blitzkriegen, meaning total power. Use all of your forces to take the person down. In doing that, we place one hand out, and the next hand comes over the top like that. This is called the straight blast. I want to teach this first. We start with a right lead. We follow with the left hand. Now notice that the hands go straight in front like that. Some people kind of punch at an angle like this, and that's all right. And some people punch more straight, and that works too. Okay, but as we do it, we just take our fighting position. We'll punch 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to try those 3 punches moving forward. 1, 2, 3. We're just going to use that footwork that we went over at the beginning, using this combination that we're going to call the straight blast. So we're in fighting position. 1, 2, 3. Now notice that as I step forward with the right foot, I do my first straight lead. My left punch comes in as I'm sliding up, and then I follow with my third punch on my step. So once again, I'll throw 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's try that again. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. And once more. 1, 2, 3. This combination works very efficiently. In some cases, we might want to incorporate a switch step on this and then follow through. So what that does is change the direction. So we step and follow through. Step and follow through. And step and follow through. Now I'm going to show you that combination with Ian. Ian, if you'll come in just for a second, I'll go ahead and put on these gloves. And as we're performing these techniques, I want to make just a little bit of light contact toward the head for this. Now, again, we tried the direct attack first of all. That would be just one technique. When we found that that didn't work very well, the direct attack, then we want to go in combinations. We want to overpower our opponent using the blitz. That's to overpower the opponent with too many punches so they really can't follow through. Now watch what happens. Come this way, Ian, just a little. Okay, the first method was to step 1, 2, 3. Let's try that one. As we're just kind of standing here, and Ian, I want you to step back if you need to. Okay, 1, 2, 3, like that. Here we go again. 1, 2, 3 on the straight blast. 1, 2, 3 on the blast, and 1, 2, 3 on the blast. The second method that I showed you was to switch the steps. Now what that does is allows my opponent to feel comfortable that I'm not moving in. So I'm moving back and forth as we go there. As we step. As we step. As we step. So using that straight blast was a very popular combination of routines for Bruce Lee. Now in addition to this combination of straight punches, we can also put in other combinations. For example, a good combination is to double up on the hook, throwing it low, then throwing it high against the opponent. As we move around, I throw it low, high combination. Low, high combination. Another combination to use would be a jab and hook. On the jab, we draw the opponent up, so they have to cover out in front, and we hook around to the side. As we're moving, jab and hook the opponent. Come right back here, Ian. As we're moving, we jab and then hook the opponent over. Jab and hook the opponent over. If we start looking at some of the kicking techniques that we could use, I'll start out with just a front kick. Okay, and in some cases, I'll throw a front kick and a second front kick. Okay, so a front kick, second front kick. These are combinations that I would use. Front kick, second front kick. In this case, I'm going to throw a reverse front kick. Maybe I have the distance there. So I'll throw a reverse front kick followed by a round kick, or what we usually refer to as a hook kick. Okay, front kick, hook kick. We're moving around. I'll throw a front kick, hook kick. And once more, front kick, hook kick. One of the basic combinations used by a lot of fighters is to double up on the hook kick. So we simply throw it out double like that. Sometimes they'll throw it out and just continue to hit with the hook kick. Seems to be a very effective combination. Another combination that a lot of people like to use is the back fist, side kick. Okay, so as you're moving, we throw a back fist, and as the person moves back, a side kick. Once again, move around, back fist, side kick combination. Now, you just have to experiment with these techniques and find out what works best for you in combination attack. Once again, most fighters seem to have a preference for this combination or that combination. The best way to develop these combinations for your own benefit is to get a partner and use some light to very little contact type of sparring where we're just kind of moving around, taking turns, throwing some techniques. Now, I'm going to try to keep it simple and work only on combinations, but notice the footwork that sets up the combinations as we move. I won't be talking through this typically, but we'll just be moving around here. Okay? And I'm going to start off, obviously, with a kick because I see that opening there. Now, we're actually doing direct attacks at this time. And a lot of times you will begin a fight by doing those direct attacks. In this case, you saw the inverted hook and the jab going back, and you see the opening there that I'm using as a reference. And once again, the direct attacks seem to be very useful here against my opponent. That was just a blitz to overwhelm the opponent throwing combinations. It doesn't have to be a combination of two. It can be a combination of three techniques, or four, or five. Our objective for this next way of attack is to, again, increase speed, increase power, or deceptiveness. Now, the first two ways of attack, direct attack and attack by combination, if we increase the speed, we're going to get a more effective routine. If we can increase our power on a direct attack, if a person comes out and we have such a powerful side kick that we just blast through them, they can block it or whatever, we're still effective on it. But let's say that you don't have the speed and power, but you can increase your deceptiveness, the ability to move around the opponent so that they think one thing is coming, it looks like an easy opportunity, but you're able to capitalize on that. So attack by drawing is your ticket. Now, by attack by drawing, we're actually creating an opening so our opponent can come in. We want to make them think that we're not prepared, or we want to cause the person, draw them out so that we can move in against them. In this case, we're going to look at the fake, the body fake. There are two types of fakes that we use typically. One is an arm or leg fake. For example, if we're trying to throw a back fist, we throw the back fist, that's the actual technique. If we're trying to fake with the back fist, we have to have enough of a fake, a feint or fake, whatever you want to call it, so that the opponent buys it. If we start faking and they don't move at all, we're in a problem because their attack by drawing combination, or attack by drawing technique, is not going to work for us. So as we're moving here, let's look at those two types of faking techniques. First of all, if you're going to kick, you need to chamber, or you need to pick up position for the foot or the hand. Let's try that a couple times. A typical faking technique for a back fist would look like this. You'll move your hand back, and you want to get it across to your opponent that you are going to hit them. You're drawing them out. You're pulling them up here and getting them to try to evade that technique. The second is the body fake, the full body fake. On the full body fake, we're moving the whole body in. So as we're moving against the opponent, the whole body comes in for the fake. Now, sometimes we'll put our hands out or put our hands low, but we're actually causing the opponent to work because the entire body's moving in here. Ian, if you'll come forward, I want to demonstrate that just a little. Face this camera right here in front. And as you're moving back and forth, and I'll talk over on this direction, as you're moving back and forth, let's see just some arm fakes. Ready as you're moving, just kind of fake with the hands. That's it. Now you want to put a little bit more into it. You want to get across to the opponent that the attack is coming. That's it. A little more power into the fake. That's right. The fake has to be the exact type of technique as the real thing. In order to pull them out, you have to fake them into it. Okay, now let's see a body type of fake. Whole body, that's it. Now once you throw it in, you have to get it back so that you're ready to counter. That's it, you're drawing them in there. Good. All right? Now, here's how it would work against an opponent. Ian, if you'll position right here. Now, if I'm trying to get my opponent this opening high, I may want to try and fake down low. So I'll try this kick, for example, stepping and acting like I'm going to hit so that I can then counter up high. So my ABD attack, my attack by drawing, is to draw the opponent down so that I can then hit high. It's really that simple. So as I'm moving here against my opponent, there goes my fake, and there's my hit. I'm moving here, here's my fake, and there's my hit. Now, if I don't have a strong enough fake, in other words, if my fake looks like this, my opponent doesn't react to it. So I haven't really accomplished anything there. So I have to sit out a fake that my opponent will see and actually go for. Anytime that we're doing a technique that's coming in, we have to get across to the opponent that they're going to be hit. If they feel like they're not going to be hit, a lot of times they'll just move and watch you through the technique, and that doesn't do you any service there. So as we go through these techniques, let's try the first one, faking low, hitting high. Okay, so as you position against your opponent, you've got to step and throw out a technique that's going to be strong enough to get your opponent to move. So here we are moving. I throw out the technique without actually hitting. It makes him move. Throwing out the technique, making him move. Now I also have to have a speed and delivery. Once I throw the technique out, I have to quickly counter with my technique. So as we're moving, I can't afford to throw out my fake and get him to react and then not follow up. So I've got to step out, fake and hit quickly and efficiently. Fake and hit like that. Now once I get the fake down, I can fake up high and hit low. In this case, especially useful for self-defense, I'm throwing my hand out, and this is incorporating the whole body. As I step out into him, and then hitting low. So as we're moving, I'm faking high and hitting low. And faking high and hitting low. And that's a good way to use the faking techniques to draw the person in. Still, another method for using attack by drawing is to create an opening. Now, when you create an opening, a lot of times you're simply taking your defense and lowering your defense so that the opponent, it looks like you're wide open. When your opponent goes to hit, then you're in a position to counter your opponent. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to take that technique coming in and counter, either by attacking the limb or attacking the actual body. So if I feel confident that I can move before he hits me, I may put my hands down. I may just move around, allow my opponent to try what he wants to. As he tries, I'm setting up the ability to kick low or punch to counter the opponent. So in this case, I'm drawing my opponent in as I move, drawing my opponent in, and then countering underneath. As I draw him in, I counter underneath. As I draw him in, I counter underneath once more, and counter underneath. Or I may create an opening low. In this case, if he were throwing, say, a round kick, give me a left lead. If he's throwing a reverse leg round kick, and I have an opening here, I threw it in there just so I could capture and counter. So in this case, I know he's a hard kicker. I just take that leg and sweep, and I can take him down or whatever I want to do there. So I may keep up high, okay, and draw him down low so he sees that. Capturing that leg, boom, I'm in terrific position to follow through. So an attack by drawing, we can both draw the opponent out, make them move, okay, by creating a fake, a counterfeit technique. We draw them out. Or we can draw the opponent into us by creating an opening that he can't avoid, and then we follow through with a counter. That's how we use attack by drawing. I want to look this time at some practical applications for the attack by drawing method. Now remember, we're either going to try to draw the opponent into us by creating an opening, a false opening by the way, or we're going to try to draw him out by firing a technique that he has to try to block or defend against. Ian, come on in, and let's give this a try. Now, obviously it's going to be difficult to just kind of talk about it when you know I'm going to try to fake you and then try to get you faked. So we'll just move around here a little. And perhaps you can work on the cues. You see a hit opening here. So I'll just try to hit the hand. In this case, I'm just destructing as we move around here. Okay? Sometimes as I move to the person, I'll try to fake them low and hit high. Okay? So here again, here's trying to fake him to get him to go there and then hit high on. So I'm trying to draw him out as I do these routines here. There you go. I actually drew you in on that one. And back again. And back. And just kind of holding on as I move it through here. One of the techniques that I prefer is to draw the punch in and then attack the bicep as we go through this. And that's a very effective technique to stop the opponent. The same thing is true if we get the person punching at us and we're hitting. We can hit into the hand, into the bicep. Or obviously if he's punching, we just kind of hold on and hit. But we get that by creating an opening in our attack by drawing method. Now sometimes you lose the spontaneity of the actual defense when you're trying to demonstrate these things in fairly slow speed. But the attack by drawing is the most important method of fighting. The hand immobilization attack is something else developed by Bruce Lee and perhaps popularized by his method of Jeet Kune Do. By hand immobilization, HIA, we're talking about actually immobilizing the arm, or FIA, the foot, to stop the foot or stop the hand. Now, Ian, come in for a second. If the person is going to hit you and you immobilize their weapons, then they don't have anything to hit you with. Also, we can use this immobilization to set up an opening to hit the opponent. So either we are neutralizing their offense by using the trapping method, or we're actually trying to hit the person. Okay, here are some of the typical methods used. For example, in a lot of Jeet Kune Do, we have the next tape, tape 3 on HIA, hand immobilization attacks, so there'll be certainly a lot of discussion about that in the next tape series. But just to show you how it's going to work, we start from an obstruction position here. In other words, I tried to hit him, he stopped it, and I can't get through it. So what I'm going to try to do is stop this and then hit my opponent. So just moving in like that. This is called a pak sao. We also can pull the hand down, called a lop sao, and hit as well. So against an opponent, if I'm just moving in, I can pull it back and hit, or I can pocket and hit. I can also jiao sao, that is run inside of the hand and move it back to strike my opponent as well. By using this type of immobilization attack, it really sets up a lot of openings for me. There are different types of trapping techniques. If the person's punching in, I can redirect, and then I'm in position to hit my opponent. Okay? If he's punching again, I can come to the inside, and once again, I'm in position to just continue following through with a series of offensive strikes. And I'm able to do that because of the HIA method, the ability to immobilize that arm and then move in. Now, some of the other ways that work for this is to use a destruction, and I demonstrated that just a few seconds ago. If I get my opponent to punch at me, I can attempt to destruct or destroy that arm. I could even, for example, reach out and hit the arm, hitting the arm, making it hurt, and then follow through with an attack. So that could actually be my attack method right there to strike. The same thing is true for the kicking techniques. If I strike to the leg, immobilizing the leg, then I'm in position to follow through with any number of techniques here. If we're moving around, you probably don't want to do this when you're sparring, but as you're moving around, any type of a strike to the opponent stops him. Now, some of the ways to do that, to immobilize the leg or arm, include destructions. If my opponent were doing a front kick at me, I just drop my elbow straight down to hit. So as the front kick comes up, I'm just hitting, whoop, made some contact there, didn't I? As far as the round kick is concerned, typically on the round kick, if you're kicking at me, I'll try to capture the round kick. Again, I've immobilized it for a second, which allows me to follow up with the next technique. In this case, it might be a takedown. It might be a groin strike. I might just hit my opponent. But what I've done is immobilize the leg in order to strike. So what I'm thinking of in my strategy is, how can I get to the person? One way to do that is through immobilization, the trapping. If the person is coming up and throwing perhaps a side kick, again, that same type of technique. A higher side kick into the body, I can come right up under it to hit my opponent. So what I'm trying to do, once again, is destroy through this type of attack. And the end effect is that I've immobilized his offense. Immobilized his offense. So as we go through these routines, I'm going to have Ian move around just a little with a few punches, and I'll just show you how they work. You just throw a straight punch out. And then in. Okay, this time, Ian, I'll just reference point, put your arm up, and I'm going to throw a right across, and I'll show how that works. I'll come in, and once I do that, I'm in position to move right into my opponent. Okay, so if you're practicing the HIA method, this type of immobilization works terrific for you. In the progressive indirect, we try to have a change-up in either speed or direction. Now, what we mean by that is assuming that a punch is coming in at full speed, well, it's easy for an opponent to kind of react to that. In other words, he sees it and he gets used to it. But what happens if it appears that your punch is coming in slow and then speeds up? It's a change up in the speed. It makes it much more difficult to stop that type of attack. So what we're going to work on is getting these techniques down to where we're changing up the speed of the technique. A round kick that looks like it's going to start out slow, then speeds up at the end. A jab that looks like it doesn't have much on it, and then all of a sudden you step in and hit. Let's try first of all using the straight lead, which is a major weapon in Jeet Kune Do. By taking our on-guard position, we're just moving back and forth. And what we do is just start out with a jab. We're kind of feeling the distance, kind of getting the person to react to it, and they see the jab coming out. And the minute they get used to that jab coming out, then we change up. We step in a little bit faster. We blast the technique in a little bit faster. So what we're trying for is a change in speed there. Okay, so let's look at this technique. So here we are. We're moving. 1, we move around. 2, and then 3. So we've really kind of changed the rhythm. Once more. You can see it coming out. There's 1. There's 2. And then there's 3. See, it doesn't have the same timing on it. You can do that for kicks and punches. You could start out a slow kick and then follow through with a very fast punch. Okay? But the component that sets the PIA off is a change in speed or direction. Ian, let me have you in here. And position right over here. Okay, give me a right lead. Now, again, I want you to just move around as I talk. If you'll notice that here's my punch, and you can see him just kind of get used to it. Okay, but that one was a little bit faster. I don't have to go always on 3s, but 3 seems to be a good opportunity to get him used to it. I could, for example, start the punch halfway and then speed it up. In other words, I'm starting the punch. You can see it coming out, and then it's a little bit faster as it goes through. As we're moving around here, here's my PIA attack. I'm just changing the speed of the technique. Okay, same thing is true for the hook kick or a round kick. I started out kind of slow like this, and then boom, get it in faster. I pick it up, and then boom, get it in much faster. You can see once again where I'm picking it up and then speeding it up at the last few seconds, as opposed to just clocking the technique out. In this case, I'm kind of sitting up, getting him used to it, letting him think that the technique isn't coming that fast, it's not going to be that strong, and at the last part of it, I really blast it in like that. Okay, so as we're moving around here, once again, I'm just following through with the technique. Now, in the PIA, we can also change the direction of the technique. For example, it might appear in this type of a technique where I'm going to kick low and then kick high. So I've just changed my direction there. Okay, so as we're moving, it looks like I'm going to throw a low hooking kick to the body, and I just pick it up high. Let me do this for the camera. Looks like I'm just throwing a low kick, and then I'll pick it up high. If you watch, here comes low, and then up high for the technique. Here it comes again, low, and then up high. Now, I'm not actually throwing a faking technique. What I'm throwing is a progressive indirect. I'm letting the technique look like it's starting slow, and the direction appears to be low. It looks like this technique is going to hit him low. And in fact, if it were a direct attack, it would hit low. But in this case, I'm going to change up the direction. So what looks low ends up much higher for him. As I move around, and then I hit much higher with the technique. Once again, low, and then high with the technique. Now, I could start off, for example, give me a left lead. I could start off a front kick and change it into an inverted hook kick. Now watch how I do that. Sometimes I'll work with my opponent out, and they'll see one technique coming up and then switching it in. So here's the front kick coming up, switched in to the hook kick. So I didn't actually throw a fake. In other words, I didn't actually throw a front kick combination hook kick. What I did was set up my hook kick so it changed directions. And I'll use that quite a bit in sparring. As we move around, I'm just kind of coming up and across like that. Moving around, up and across. Now you notice that it varies from the actual hook kick. Inverted hook kick, which would come up and tap in like that. This time it's coming up and across. Up and then across. Instead of coming simply up and out, this hook kick is coming up and then out. It's changing the direction of the technique. Now, if we do that in a hand type of skill, I may throw like a faking type of technique to kind of get his attention and see what he's going to do. Now watch, I'm going to change up the direction of the punch. This time I'm going to take my jab and change it into a hook, just like that. It looks like I'm going low with it, but then I change up the direction of the technique. Low to high. In this case, low to high. Progressive indirect attack. I'm progressing from one position to another, so I'm trying to strike this area in an indirect manner. And I got there by changing the direction of the technique. So you can put those types of things together. Now let's go back to the straight blast that we started with the combination attack. If we find that even in combination the straight blast doesn't work, we can change up the speed and integrity of the attack. And here's how we do it. Just stay there in the left lead. Okay, now, let's say that we tried this basic position here. You move back with me. Okay? Here's the basic straight blast. That was actually a foot immobilization attack there too, wasn't it? Okay, here's the straight blast coming in. Now, that would be the standard, the first way to use it. As you get a little more specialized, a little more advanced, you find out that you can switch steps and move that much more effectively. And in this case, what I'm going to do is start my technique out, and then, by changing the speed, follow through. Now watch what I did. It looks like I'm going to throw the right punch here, but what I did was actually throw the left. Okay, now let me make that clear. Typically, if I were to start out the straight blast technique with a straight punch and follow through, that would be the textbook case there. But in this case, what I did is pull my hand back, and really, with my power and speed, I changed up, so I'm actually hitting him with the left. So the right technique gave way to the left technique, which allows me even more speed on the front technique. Okay? So in this case, here's the right lead, followed with a reverse cross, and then I have still another cross. Now look what happens. Instead of simply stepping in, 1, 2, 3, what I did was I pulled back and fired more power on the reverse. Okay, Ian, I'm going to throw a few at you as we move around. Here we're moving. You can throw some at the stomach if you want to. And anytime I find a little pause here, I'll go ahead and try to blast in. Okay, go ahead and try to block these so you don't just get hit. Okay, and what I'm doing here, I'm faking low and then following through. So I was able to get my straight blast in by using that drawing, the faking method here. Okay. And once again, I'll just keep going there with that blasting technique. Here I'm moving back and forth. Here I just fired a direct attack at my opponent. Just kind of get the range. In this case, I'm just going to double up on the technique because I see the opening. This time I'll double up on the technique, and then once I double up, if he's still there, I'll go with my blast. And of course, he's still there. So I'll follow through with the blast. So you can see, by putting these different ways of attack together, it increases their ability to score against their opponent. In 1989, I introduced the principle of the Jeet Do matrix to Inside Kung Fu magazine. Now, every competition, and certainly self-defense, is a competition in which two fighters attempt to struggle until one person walks away the winner, the other lays there the loser. Every competition has three variables. They're strategy, attributes, and chance. Now, chance is something we can't plan for. It's luck. Two fighters go into a ring, one slips and falls down on a piece of paper that a spectator had thrown into the ring. Hurts his knee. That's bad luck. We can't do anything about that. Attributes, on the other hand, include such variables as speed and power, tenacity and intensity. We can certainly program for that. We can do techniques and such that would increase our speed and our power. There are a lot of tapes and such on the market that deal with the Jeet Do attributes. The third element is strategy. That's what this tape was about. What is your plan of action? The plan of action for Taekwondo is to kick. The plan of action for Judo is to get the person down on the floor. The plan of action for boxing is to punch with the hands. The problem comes in when your plan of action, your strategy, doesn't match your attributes. Let's say a person wants to be a terrific basketball player and they're watching a basketball game. Notice that the person that goes up and takes the ball and slam dunks it through the net is the one that gets the most points. So they decide, that's going to be my plan of action. That's going to be my strategy. But in reality, they stand only 5'2". They don't have the attribute of height that's necessary to carry out that plan of action. So we have to pick those arts that make it functional for us. If we have the attribute of flexibility, we can certainly perform Taekwondo. If we don't like getting hit in the head, then stay away from boxing unless you're willing to put in the time to make it work for you. In the matrix, we have the opportunity to conceptually examine each of these different ranges and how they can be used to help us better prepare for the combat arena. Now, it's often said that Bruce Lee, who of course was the creator of Jeet Do, combined elements of Wing Chun Kung Fu with various grappling methods, most designed around the Judo, Jiu-Jitsu format, along with the Western boxing. He was very influenced by Western boxing, the footwork, the mobility, in and out, the jab. Muhammad Ali was one of his favorite fighters, and various forms of Gong Fu or Kung Fu as we write it here, the Northern Shaolin and such for the kicking techniques. So, assuming that this is the components of your matrix, what you'll have is, using the Wing Chun, covers the tramping range. You'll be functional at tramping range here. If you understand the Judo, that would be the grappling range. So if you're caught in a grappling position, then having this information allows you to operate in grappling. Now, when they first started the Ultimate Fighting Championships in this country, most of the fighters had no idea that they would eventually end up on the ground. Our fighters in this country, coming from boxing and karate and such, were simply unprepared to go into that type of arena, get taken to the ground, and then they didn't know what to do. They were helpless. Match a Brazilian jiu-jitsu expert against a boxer, and the minute the fight goes to the ground, you have a Brazilian jiu-jitsu expert versus a man on the ground. Boxing doesn't have very much relevance when it's on the ground. Some years earlier, when we had the full contact fighting in this country, the kickboxing was first introduced. Most of the traditional karate and taekwondo practitioners had no idea about in close, the trapping, the boxing range, and they were completely unprepared. At long range, they could kick, but in close, they simply were too much of a standing target for the well-trained boxer, kickboxer. So we have to have each of these elements in our matrix in order to be effective at self-defense. The next art was the boxing. Now, boxing is perhaps the best art available for punching range. The boxers literally make millions and millions of dollars. So they can pick any art and hire the services of any master in order to teach them to do the best punching techniques possible. And certainly they're able to do that through the boxing. And then finally, the Kung Fu we're going to put at long range, realizing that there are various methods of Kung Fu that stress in close or ground fighting and various pressure points and such. But Kung Fu, like a karate, we're going to put at long range. For this reason, the fighter now has success at grappling range if he's matched on the floor, at trapping range if it's in close, standing up, at punching range if it's a medium distance, and at long range if it's kicking. Now, your matrix may be very different from Bruce Lee's or some other individual. For example, instead of Wing Chun at trapping, you may practice a Filipino martial art such as Kali, or you may use the Okinawan Goju that has a lot of the trapping techniques in it. Instead of judo, you may go to the Brazilian jiu-jitsu or basic wrestling. There are quite a few wrestlers that are becoming very effective in terms of combat usage. Boxing, it would be hard to beat boxing, but any type of a punching technique that would give you that format would be functional for you. And then, of course, at long range, Thai boxing, karate, taekwondo would give you the kicking expertise that you need. Now, once again, there'll be individuals that would say, my Thai boxing also works at punching range and trapping range, and we can even do some grappling from that. That's fine. But for most of us, each art represents an individual range. And remember, we said that for a lot of classical martial artists, their identity is recognized in their limitations. They're limited at kicking range. They're limited at punching range or trapping or grappling. Now, once we get into reality fighting, once we put on the gloves and we throw away all of the kata and the cultural norms that exist in a classical martial art, we find out that we actually only have 3 ranges. Those ranges include kickboxing range. When you're standing up at a distance or even a medium distance, you're basically kickboxing. Any different way of kicking doesn't really matter. You may have 4 or 5 arts up here that you've learned your kicking from. You may have savate, you may have karate, you may have a kung fu, you may have a Wing Chun. You've learned all sorts of different kicking skills, but ultimately you're in kickboxing range, and that's what it's going to come down to. When you're in close, you may have learned a lot of different trapping skills, a lot of different boxing skills, elbows, knees, and such, but ultimately, when you throw out all the descriptions and the limitations, you're going to be in a combination of trapping and boxing range. Trapping means to grapple with the hands, to immobilize and grapple with the hands. So you are combining the boxing, the in-close boxing, with the trapping techniques, hence the word trap boxing. And then, if you go to the ground and you're basically a stand-up fighter, you want to go into a mounted position and attempt to get the opponent to submit through punching. So we sometimes call that submission boxing on the ground. So typically in a street fight scenario or even in a full contact practice match, you're going to be going from the kickboxing range to the trap boxing range, to the submission boxing range. And a lot of practitioners who want to invest some time in this will cancel out one of these. For example, they'll only do the stand-up fighting and not be involved in the ground fighting. Now, Jeet Kune Do is not really about moving from art to art. That's one way that we could look at it in a manner in which we're trying to practice or put together the skills. But what we're really trying to get to in Jeet Kune Do is picking out certain techniques that we want to use. We're chipping away the non-essentials. We want to get our art down to a few kicks and a few punches and a few grappling techniques in which we are sure of them. And then how do you make them work? Well, you don't toss out the technique. If your jab isn't working, you don't throw out the jab and then go into another technique. Change the angle or change the way of attack. If you can't make your jab work on a straight, linear, simple direct attack, then change to a combination attack. Change to a progressive indirect attack. That's how you make it work. That's the strategy for Jeet Kune Do. Now, when Bruce Lee used to talk about chipping away the non-essentials, that's exactly what he was talking about. Let's get down to a few basic techniques that work, that you can stand by, and that you know. You put in the time. Then let's go back to our strategy and attributes. If your strategy is to use the jab and the hook and such techniques as that, and you develop the attributes to make that work, the speed, the power, and the deceptiveness, then your skill is going to work under any situation. Whether you are confronted in kicking, punching, tramping, or grappling, it just takes a few techniques to put together a terrific, what we would call a scientific street fighting method. Thanks for watching tape number 2 on the strategy in Jeet Kune Do. In tape number 3, we're going to further look at the HIA method, the hand immobilization attack, as we look at different methods for trapping in Jeet Kune Do.